of stages. So what we felt was, just taking away that barrier to entry that is the payment question really, I think, helps us extend that growth. So especially in emerging markets and across the world where some of the payment systems aren't quite as developed, investing in the future of those territories as well. So
you're giving up a little bit of revenue, I guess, but getting a lot more eyeballs.
Yeah, exactly. And then the sort of the strategy for us moving forward with the theme store and with other content in the app is to really sort of find new monetization techniques and develop those sort of ecosystems as we go, rather than requiring folks to make that decision at the door, as it were.
Gotcha. Do you guys have any sort of sense of how well it's been doing since it's been a month, right?
Yeah, 4 weeks today. We made the transition, and it's been going really well. So we've welcomed another 50% of our user base on top of where we got to with the paid app.
So 50% more than what you had?
Yeah, so the user base that we built up as a paid app over 4 years, we've introduced another half again in 4 weeks, which is pretty awesome.
Cool.
And we've also, through the theme store, had 12 million items of content downloaded in the 4 weeks that we've been a free app, which again is a pretty awesome statistic that we're really happy about.
Gotcha. As we were talking before, you mentioned something really interesting, how there really haven't been too many apps that were popular paid apps that all of a sudden went free, and it seemed like you guys didn't kind of know how to maneuver that on the Google Play charts. I think even Google didn't quite understand what was going to happen.
Well, yeah, so I think we've been one of those rare apps that's been in the Android market and then the Google Play ecosystem for quite some time. And what happens when you're in that position is you really test the water, as it were. So we've been in conversations very closely with Google about how to report our tax early in the sort of history of Google Wallet, how to make various transitions. And one of the things that I think no one really knew is what would happen in the charts when a paid app became free and was still quite prominent. And it was interesting, for about half a day we were a free app in the paid charts on Google Play, so that was awesome. But within a couple of days we switched over into the free charts. And for all of those of you who work with chart rankings and analytics companies and so on, it was actually quite an interesting transition, because we pretty much dropped off a cliff and then quite rapidly ascended again as the sort of cumulative days of downloads were.
Well, you went from a number one spot to way down, and now it's
yeah. So we sort of leveled up, and we hit we were the number 21 app, or if you include games, 32 in the US, and had great performance in parts of Europe and in Canada as well. So globally, we're really pleased with that. But as I say, the real rationale for us here was, sure, we'd love great chart exposure, but it was about really just growth and trying to welcome a lot more users into the product.
Gotcha. Now that it's free, are you noticing users in other countries or other locations adopting SwiftKey in ways that they weren't before?
Well, yeah. So Brazil is a great country to talk about, because obviously it's what everyone's talking about today. But yeah, the growth that we've seen in Brazil was actually really, really welcome. Brazil was a nation where up until now we'd have quite a lot of trial downloads, but we wouldn't have very many conversions to the paid app.
So we used to have a separate trial.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that does allow folks to try before you buy, but the friction of installing one app and then trying it and then it expiring and then installing another app, we all know that mobile users, the more stages you have to process, the more you lose. So just trying to sort of really narrow it down and then build from that premise, that's going really well in emerging economies such as Brazil.
Do you guys have any? Do you have any particular tips or suggestions for any other apps that may be trying to go from paid to free? Because it seems like your audience is potentially changing. Like you're saying that the charts are changing. Was there anything you would have done differently?
Well, we really thought hard about it. We spent several months really going through the strategy, and I think one of the key things that we really did want to get right was not to feel that we'd left our paid users behind.
Right.
So I think that's the key mistake that so many people make when thinking about this transition. They think, don't take any prisoners, we'll go to free, it'll be fine. Yeah. And then all of a sudden folks who paid, maybe just a few dollars, maybe less than $1 for your app in the past, are really upset about that. So we made sure that the theme store that we built had the ability to provision content for free to users who had previously paid for the app. And what that meant was we were able to give those users 10 themes for free that were the best themes, in our opinion, on the store. And that really sweetened the kind of news and made them very enthusiastic about the transition.
Gotcha. And how are the users taking on these new themes? Because I love SwiftKey's predictive technology. It just feels good. It's whenever I test out the Android phone, SwiftKey's the first thing I put on there. But changing the way the keyboard looks, I feel like could almost hurt the good stuff about SwiftKey, because you guys spend so much time designing the actual keyboard, right? So how have users been accepting the themes, and how do you design for that?
Really well. 12 million items of content downloaded is not a small number, but I think the key point was that in the run-up to this, we had a situation where we used various tools such as user voice, and we monitored Twitter and Facebook and so on. And what we had was a lot of people really asking for themes. Hey, I want to change it to this color or that color, and you'd be amazed at the long tail of requests that come in. Right. And it sort of, if you added all those requests together, would form the biggest request that we had as a business. Why can't I customize this? And I think a lot of people say that that's true about Android users generally. They love to customize. It's part of what makes them Android users, but I think it's just something that we see in mobile users really. People love to customize what they're using. So launching a theme store felt like a natural progression for us, and it's been pretty well vindicated.
Gotcha. We've talked a lot just over all these releases you guys have had, but one thing you mentioned most recently is the idea that you eventually want SwiftKey to become more than just a keyboard. So can you talk about what that means? Because right now, I could see your technology is great. I think the predictive stuff we've seen, you partner with other companies and they're using some of it too, but what else could it be for SwiftKey?
Well, it already is more than just a keyboard.
Right.
It's a keyboard with a really smart engine of learning and prediction behind it, and I think that's a key distinction. That's what I think elevates us as a product beyond a lot of the sort of regular keyboards out there. But what we see really when we look at the keyboard is a really engaged place that a lot of people spend time. So we recently looked at some of our analytics, and I think it was about on average 54 minutes a day was spent on a device with the keyboard open, which is an incredible amount of time in a person's day to have a product in their fingertips.
Yeah.
And we, I think, added together, we looked at Flurry, and both Google and Facebook apps combined come in at about 45 minutes a day, 46 minutes, something like that. So it's more than both of those apps are open, both of those suites of apps are open a day. Now that's an incredible engagement, and I'm sure people say, but it's just them typing, right? But we think we can do really cool things with that sort of engagement. We think that the ability to have a direct relationship with our users and to really understand their intent and to help them build a great experience from their device is a great starting point. So that's probably all I can say at this point.
Okay. So something's in the works. Yeah, you guys have you have a little bit of space to work with. So I'm just imagining what else could fit there. Maybe some sort of subliminal advertising, as you're typing or something. Go do pizza.
Well, I think one thing that's really important to say is that we've always taken very seriously the user experience that we provide, and so for us to do anything crazy with subliminal advertising, is certainly not on our agenda. But yeah, I think there are a lot of helpful things that we can do with that space.
Excellent, cool. Well, so what does this change? What did the change mean for the way you guys work with your partners too? Because before you used to have a white labeled solution that I've seen. I think Samsung and a couple others have implemented in the keyboards that actually ship with their devices. But I think most people didn't actually know they were using SwiftKey technology at the time. I've used a lot of those, and honestly, I don't even like the way it's implemented. I'd still rather just have the pure SwiftKey experience. How is it changing now for you guys?
We've got an incredibly positive relationship with our partners, and they love our technology, and that's why they're our partners. So we're in a really strong position. I think what this does, this launch, is it really brings more focus on the keyboard. It allows more users to see that they can change their keyboard, which is still a key battle. And you're probably going to mention iOS soon. When we go into iOS, that's going to be a really key thing for us to try and tell just regular iOS users is, hey, did you know now that you can change your keyboard? So if you want to customize it, or if you want to do various other things that it doesn't right now, there are choices all of a sudden. So for us, I think that this launch is really, it's good for us, and it's good for anyone who is interested in customizing their device. So our partners are obviously interested, having chosen us, in customizing the device better, and I think that just improves that relationship.
Gotcha. One thing you mentioned also to me is that I think I was wondering like if you're going to market it differently, because there's a big difference between marketing, paid app that somebody has to shell out a couple of bucks for, versus having a free one where they have everything accessible to them. Do you have a new strategy going forward to get more users?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, up until this point, I think I spoke on a panel last month about how we had never done any paid UA, and the success that SwiftKey had was all about just building a great product and allowing it to organically grow. What's happened since then is that we've really found that now that we are able to build a freemium ecosystem, all of a sudden, and I'm going to regret this for all the folks in the room without networks and so on, but you're in a situation where you can build out a lot of lifetime value, you can really understand how users are engaging with your app, and then you can acquire users against that. So I think moving forward it would be something I'd be surprised if we didn't go down that road of trying to explore UA. But also I think more generally, when you're a free app, getting someone to install your app is far easier. Retaining them is much harder because the relationship you have with the paying customer is already one of endorsement. So trying to understand how within the app we can better educate and explain the features of what we do, I think is another critical thing that needs to change.
So acquisition becomes easier when you're free, but I guess reacquisition, the idea of keeping them around, is the new struggle for you.
Yeah.
What do you think about the changing kind of face of the keyboard market right now? It's amazing to me that we can even say there's a keyboard market,
I love it.
It's crazy, it's crazy, but so there's you guys, there's Swipe, and then Apple just announced all these other changes as well. How do you see this playing out now? Because I'm not sure you guys could have envisioned this when you started.
I mean, we hoped for it,
sure.
As I think any entrepreneur does when they're starting something. But yeah, it's a really exciting time. I think 4 or 5 years ago when we were beginning to build SwiftKey and thinking about what we could do with it, we didn't really know if there was going to be a market demand. And now we're in a position where not only was that market demand proven, but for whatever reason, it hasn't just influenced the Android ecosystem, it's influencing other ecosystems as well. So clearly, smartphone users are demanding a better keyboard. They're demanding a more personal experience on their device that adapts to them, rather than the other way around where you have to kind of figure out how to use it. And I think that that's a key change.
Cool. One interesting change you guys made recently was SwiftKey Cloud. The ability of storing your preferences and kind of what you're doing on your keyboard up into the cloud so that the keyboard actually learns with you across multiple devices. How has that been going for you? And are you guys planning any other sort of really interesting integration like that?
Yeah, well, I think SwiftKey Cloud is a fundamentally useful part of SwiftKey because it's what makes it durable. It's what means that if you break your phone or if it gets stolen or if you have multiple devices even, that personalization, that true sense of your phone understanding what you want to type when you're using it is retained. And that's really, I think, a critical part of what we're trying to do, because if we can build this essence of how you speak and how you type, and then have that follow you through your technology usage, that's where the proposition becomes really powerful. So SwiftKey Cloud enables that, and over the last year we've really built out the features into a really robust way. I think there's something like 10 personalization sources now that are available through our SDK and in the product.
Is that tablets and smartphones at this point?
Yeah. So that was, I think, the key for us when we launched SwiftKey Cloud, was that it would allow you to sort of seamlessly back up the insights of your typing across your devices and use personalization sources.
Nice. So you brought up iOS 8. I didn't. How is the iOS 8 progress going for your keyboard?
Yeah, it's great.
You guys put out a statement really quickly.
Yeah.
You were working on one.
Well, we'd already worked on something because we launched in January SwiftKey Note, which is sort of a note-taking environment that pairs really nicely with Evernote and allows folks with iPhones and iPads to use some of our prediction technology. But there was a critical constraint in making SwiftKey Note, which is that it's not a keyboard across your device, and that's what really makes SwiftKey on Android so compelling. So when Tim Cook revealed at WWDC that it wasn't Tim Cook, I guess it was Craig Federighi, but that third parties could now use their platform and build third-party keyboards for iOS. That's a really exciting time, not just for us, but for iOS users, because it, I think, gives them great choice and allows them to customize that typing experience.
Excellent. Well, so how long do you think it'll be until the iOS 8 version's ready? Do you have any sense of that?
I mean, we'd love for it to be ready when iOS 8 hits stores. So
Cool.
Fingers crossed. It's still early days.
I'll hold you to that.
Yeah, we're still in the beta phase, but I'd be disappointed if we didn't have something ready for the get-go.
Makes sense. Does anybody have any questions for Joe? Anything?
Everyone's still watching the Argentina game.
I know. I see a lot of screens in front of people. I can hear them shouting.
Question.
Adam?
Just as far as not to blame, but Ken Margolis with AppCap, I'm just interested to find out what is the best resources for user acquisition.
Best resources for user acquisition. Well, that's the only question we can take, I guess.
Okay, that's a tough one to ask, I guess, because it really depends on the kind of product that you have. So a lot of UA resources are designed specifically for games. So if you have a game, then there are a whole range of them, and I believe VentureBeat has written wonderful reports that go through all the different ad sources that you can use and the effectiveness.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. For us, it's a little different because we're a productivity app. The other key consideration I would give as an app producer is what your target market is, because great traffic can be driven in high-value markets, or it can be driven in other global markets, and really different ad networks have different skill sets. So there are a ton of services out there that can help you. There are also a lot of sort of aggregate level services. Uplift is one. HasOffers do a great deal to help their partners with mobile app tracking figure out what the great sources are. I think it's too difficult to answer in 30 seconds, but
you can chase Joe down.
Keep coming to MobileBeat, and I'm sure you'll learn
cool
about UA.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Joe. Let's have a round of applause for Joe.